Hello, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sebastian, and I am the founder of the European Campaign Playbook, which is the community for pro-European professionals who together we are writing the playbook to win campaigns. And one of the things that we do many things. One of the things we do is we follow very closely the elections taking place here in Europe. And yesterday we had an election, last night we had an election in Norway. And as you can see here, this is one of the headlines. The election in Norway was won by this red-green alliance with an absolute majority. The votes are still being counted, but I mean it's pretty much it's pretty much that the socialist left and the Eurosceptic center party would hold most of the seats. It could be 100. I think there were one or two seats up or down. And to analyze the results of the election today with us, we have two young parliamentary candidates for two parties: the Conservatives, which were the incumbent party, and also the Liberals. And today with them, we are going to focus on not only the campaign and the consequences of this red-green coalition for the country, but we are very interested in hearing from them how is it to be a young politician running for office, how they are using their own social media accounts, how they are taking the message to voters, and what other interesting things they have witnessed during the very intense election campaign. So without further ado, I want to introduce you first to Anne, who is now joining us on the screen. Anne, you have run for the region of Hordaland, which is where the second biggest city in Norway is, Bergen, for Venstre. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but this is Norway's Liberal Party. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a long night, and it's been a chaotic night for sure. Venstre, which is Norway's Liberal Party, got around 4.5% of the votes, which means we're over the margin. I'm not sure what it's called in English. We call it sperregrense in Norwegian, but we're above a threshold at least.
Yeah.
We're in right now. And I'm in there as a deputy member of the parliament, I think. I'm not sure what it's called, but yeah, it went well by my standards.
Thank you, and congratulations for that very narrow victory. But again, it's like you said, it's every vote will count, and you told me that you are still counting them, so it might, all the waiting is still there. So we wish you, of course, good luck for you and for the party. And with us also is Vegard, who is has been running for Oslo, the capital, for the Conservative Party, which was the incumbent party, which in this election lost the majority in parliament. So it was a tough night. So thank you very much, Vegard, for joining us today.
Yes, it was a rough night last night, I shall admit. And I think Anne and I both are rather tired, which you should be. And we have a new majority in Norway, meaning that some political parties, we don't really know which, will have a government to fix. And one of the things that I find most interesting about the new majority is that last time when we had a center-left party in government, we had a situation where they had agreed on some principles. So the center party and Labour Party and Socialist Left, they haven't even decided on if they're going to be NATO members or if they're going to have an EEA agreement. So we're in for an interesting couple of weeks, I think. So this is turning from the ladies who run Norway until the guys who run Norway, and I'm not sure if that's a good idea.
One of the things that strike to many people especially in the States, right, where most of our, the culture about politics and campaigns, it mostly comes from the States, and to be honest, it's very, it's not very useful when that's one of the things we're trying to do here. We're trying to have a very, Europe-centric view of campaigns and elections. And one of the things that it strikes everybody also, of course, in the UK, but they are much closer, is that the election doesn't actually end on election night. That you have this coalition building, and even I am now based in Brussels, in Belgium, and then when I tell them that we've been like maybe more than a year without a government trying to negotiate a coalition agreement, they're very impressed of of our politics. But in the end, like you said, the parliament now has a new majority, and that will bring about a lot of changes. I wouldn't necessarily want to spend a lot of time analyzing the consequences, but certainly for the people who are following us, who come from all parts of Europe, maybe there is a few Americans who have woken up very early today, following us. But you had your take, Vegard, on the outcome. Probably we can hear from Anne now.
Yeah, so I remember I became a member of the Liberal Party in Norway in 2013. That was after 8 years of government formed by Socialist Left, formed by Centre Party, and formed by the Labour Party. And I think the reason why I became involved in politics was because I was so tired. I was so bored. We had a government for 8 years that didn't do any major changes to society, in which I felt as though they forgot, they didn't have good enough ways of handling climate change, the refugee crisis. They didn't ensure that our economic position was sustainable at all. They used 4% of our pension fund in order to finance their state budget. So I remember there was a huge mobilization towards parties that were in the center or towards the right at that time, actually, for my part whatsoever also. It was obvious that if I wanted to become a member of a political party that takes climate change seriously, that should be the Liberal Party. And that's when I became a part of it. And now, 8 years later, 8 years after we've had a position predominantly composed of parties center-right, I feel as though we're not done whatsoever, because we've had 8 years in which we've proposed reforms, in which we've proposed new ways of handling our municipalities. We've moved more power from the state to the municipalities. We've proposed decriminalizing drugs. We've proposed a whole new plan for how we're going to handle our climate goals within 2030. So right now, I feel like we're not as tired from the sitting government as we were earlier, but at the same time, the left side of the spectre has definitely mobilized. They have around 100 seats if we're looking at the count. And most likely there will be a majority government formed, composed of, as you can see in the texting also, the Socialist Left, the Centre Party, and the Labour Party, the same people who were in government 8 years ago. So we'll see how that goes. I don't think they'll have to lean onto communists in the parliament in order to get their majority, but that was a lot of the hype also towards today's election, that actually the Red Party, who are communists, the revolutionary communists, that they had a high standing. They've also captured a mandate in my city, for example. So that will be interesting. They're starting their conversations right now in order to make a platform for the government. And then Vegard and I, who are used to having power for a long time, our parties will sit in opposition and try to cooperate where we get the most power to.
You certainly mentioned a lot of topics that have been brought up during the campaign. There is one, however, that seemed to have been like super dominant, and it's very characteristic of Norway. And when I was there in 2000, I think it was 2009, 2010. I mean, it was one of the things that struck me most, which is your main thing is you're the whole day debating on the future of the oil industry. Okay, and I always make that joke. I wish a country like mine, like Spain, the hottest political, topic is the future of the oil industry, right? But that is again very interesting. What is? I mean, tell us a little bit more about what's. I want to hear from you both, of course. But Anne, tell us a little bit more about what's behind that debate. I mean, what's really important about that debate for Norwegians.
So Norway's predominant product in our economy, actually, the product we export the most, have the most employment centered around whatsoever, that is oil. 1969, we opened Ekofisk, which was a major oil platform, and that laid the foundation for an adventure. And it's earned us great. It's been like Disneyland here. Our GDP has grown so much because of the oil. We've ensured employment for a lot of people. Our country has been able to expand the welfare state predominantly because of that. I come myself from a family in which both my parents have worked in the oil industry, and they met each other in Equinor, which is the largest oil company in Norway. It's also partially state-owned. 33% of it is state-owned. So there is indeed, there's no doubt that the oil industry has served Norway well. But then comes what's so insecure about oil is predominantly how the market swings. And that has also made our economy vulnerable. Between the years 2000 and 2014, we had a really high oil price, which meant that also the state, to a large extent, subsidized searching for new oil reserves. To a large extent, we also opened them, and a lot of those oil reserves are actually not very fruitful investments if we look at the oil price today. It's been a huge topic, predominantly because our economy is so based on oil. So there's that economic aspect that you don't want to be a banana republic. You don't want to put all your stocks into one product, in which OPEC, in which Saudi Arabia, Qatar, et cetera, might influence to a large extent how much money you get out of the exportation, but also because certain people, climate activists, professors, have political parties too, have pointed to the bigotry, perhaps, in that Norway, at the same time as we push for more ambitious climate goals, at the same time as we're very focused on how we're going to cut our emissions with 55% within 2030, we also base our economy on a product where most of the emissions come from the burning of the product, from the exportation of the product to other countries. And a couple of weeks ago, the IPCC, the UN Climate Change Panel, they came out with a new report. I don't think that many people have read it, not within the Norwegian population, but it dominated a lot of the websites that they had warned of code red for the planet. And then in Norway, that's also, I do think I would give international media credit for capturing that oil has become a large part of our campaigns right now. That's at least all our party leaders have discussed in debates whatsoever. There are different parties with different stances on this. The government, which is composed of the Christian Democrats, of the Liberal Party, and the Conservative Party, which Vegard is here to represent, a couple of weeks, or maybe a week ago, a couple of days ago at least, proposed removing some of the subsidies to the oil and gas industry. And that's been a long call, a long proposement from a lot of the climate organizations. But then a lot of the debate is whether we should look for more oil or not. One party, which is the Green Party in Norway, they want to set a date for set a date for when we're going to stop with oil, stop with all of the production. That has also dominated a lot. And we've had a lot of discussions of what is the next oil, what will Norway base its economic product on. Frankly, I think we can't, I don't think politicians have the solution to this either. So I don't think it's very fruitful when politicians discuss this. I think what we do as politicians best is make it better to start your own company, to develop new ideas, new technology. And that's where I think the next government will fail also, precisely because it's composed of the Labour Party, the Socialist Left. They want to put the big money into starting big new state companies for offshore wind, for different technology that we honestly, frankly, don't know if will win forwards towards 2030, if we'll be able to secure enough supply of, if there will be an economy for that. So it will be interesting following the next government and how they will reach our ambitions. They're high, but we only have 9 years on us.
Thank you, Anne. So Vegard, after, I think Anne, she made a really good introduction to the topic, and like I said, for people outside Norway, this is like talking about, I don't know, something outside of this world. Okay, but it is a very interesting debate, and I think she framed it like this way: like, do we keep searching for oil, or do we find alternatives? Is that the really dividing line? What's your and also what's your take on this very interesting topic?
Thank you so much, Sebastian. And you have invited two people from this wonderful city of Bergen, so you will have long conversations from both of us, I believe, on and myself. I think what is very important to recognize for Europe is the fact that we, as Norwegians, provide 1/3 of the natural gas for all of continental Europe. We are a major energy supplier to the continent and the Union. We are also the one and only petrol-producing nations that has invested 100 billion Norwegian kroners, that is about 10 billion euros, in providing a market for electrical vehicles. So this August, 75% approximately of the new car sales in Norway were electric cars, Tesla, and so on. We are perhaps the only nation that is serious about cutting our carbon emissions, that are achieving that. We have a lower emissions rate today than we had in 1993. That is a testament to what the current government, or the government that Anna and I have been happily supporting, have achieved. And I think that that is something for European voters, also perhaps the early rising Americans, to take a note of. We are definitely on track to reaching our own emissions targets, and we are definitely also on a path to enhancing our economy. Norway owns about 1.5 to 2% of all the world's listed stocks. So for 5.4 million people, that's pretty impressive. Thank you, Sebastian.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so let's continue talking for a few more minutes about the election itself. But then, like I said, we will quickly bring a topic that is very interesting for the people who are part of our community, and that is, as a young politician, I'm pretty sure you have been doing the utmost to reach voters using your own social media, becoming very creative, very innovative, and we really want to listen to your first-hand experience of the campaign. But let's put that aside for a minute, and let's continue talking about the election itself. So oil definitely was part of the conversation, at least in the conversation, maybe because most of my friends come from Bergen, where I studied. That is because I could see like oil all around my timeline. But there is another. There have been other topics. I am especially interested in the one, of course, about the European Union, because one of the things that, one of the consequences that this election may bring is, if not a halt, but maybe a delay in, conversations about potentially in the future, if all circumstances are met, then apply to join the EU. So I know, having lived in Norway, I know that this is not something that people wake up every day and say, "Oh, we need to be part of the EU." It's not like that. It's not, but it is true that it's part of the conversation. And yet you have this center party, which I don't know why they are called center. You now tell me a little bit more about them, but they seem to be one of the biggest winners, no? So please, Vegard, just tell us more about this party and about the conversation about the European Union in your country, in Norway.
In the city that you love, Sebastian, that I love as well, and Anna too, there's a place called Sakken. And in 1994, my little darling sister, she was a flower girl for the then Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland, Norway's first female Prime Minister from the Labour Party. And Gro took her up, carried her high. She was smiling. I'm not really sure how that went. My sister was a big girl. But that election was a European election. We decided that we did not want to go into the European Union in 1994. And sadly, from my perspective, we didn't go all the way. We got an EEA agreement instead, and the Center Party was the primary antagonists of that story. They were against Europe. They are still against Europe, and they are also in a position where they are not in agreement with the EEA agreement. So what will their position be? It's rather uncertain. We might have a Norwegian Brexit situation if there is a directive from Europe, from Brussels, that is not to the liking of the Center Party. The Center Party in Norway is very, very skeptical to international cooperation. They are very, very skeptical to Europe, and I believe that that might be the biggest mistake of their political leaning. Fortunately, Jonas Gahr Støre, he is definitely not of their ilk, so he is perhaps a man that perhaps can get their colors down.
And I mean that is so interesting because of course, again, I remember that even the whole conversation around Euro was, we're a small country with natural resources. Why do we want to join a club that is mostly focused on internal market and of course farm subsidies and all that, and it was at the same time interesting that and even the leader of that party, tell me more about him, but he's like a farmer. He was a farmer, now he turned politician. I mean, even it's interesting to see, because one of the big things, one of the big incentives to join the EU is all the subsidies to agriculture, the CAP. So you said they don't like international cooperation, so it's not only about it's not only about the EU. Maybe they are uncomfortable sharing their sovereignty with other organizations. But do they have like a strong anti-immigrant, sort of like a little bit of racist content, or they are like mostly focused on they are more pragmatic, like, no, this arrangement with the EU doesn't work for us, which is why we will look for something else, like many other nations have done.
I wouldn't call them racists, because I don't think that's correct to say about Senterpartiet. But definitely, on my family farm, we would have a huge issue if we could not have EU members joining and working on our farm. And that will be a problem for construction, for farming. We will have a huge problem if the goal of the Senterpartiet will be, or the Center Party will be achieved. I don't think that's the right policy for Norway. We've seen it in the horrendous outcomes in the United Kingdom. We don't want that for our country.
So thank you, Vegard. I'm moving to Anne, who probably in case you missed the last few minutes of the conversation, I was asking about the Center Party, and please introduce us, or if there is something you would like to add to what Vegard has already said, but introduce us to this Eurosceptic party in Norway, and let us know more about the tactics they use, like the message, because far right anti-EU parties that we campaign against in Belgium or in Hungary. Don't get me started, or even in Spain. they are like very aggressive. They have a very provocative tone. They will be the ones using fake accounts and disinformation and all that. So they are very uh, nasty in the sense, in the campaigning sense. But what about is that the case in Norway, or do you have a more civilized anti-EU party?
So, welcome to Norway. We're a member of the EEA, and most political parties are Eurosceptic. It's not just the Centre Party, although definitely that is definitely they're against our EEA membership, which is crucial for the Norwegian economy, crucial for our exports, crucial for divestments, whatever. I think what's interesting from this this election too was how a couple of months ago the leader of the Centre Party and a lot of their leading candidates too they would say fiercely that they wanted to go out of the EEA. They've moderated that throughout the campaign, I think. Because that posed too many critical questions. Originally, the Centre Party, it came out of my political party, the Social Liberal Party, a grouping there that thought that we didn't focus enough on agricultural policies, that we didn't represent the small villages, for instance. And if you look to other countries, look to Sweden, look to Finland, you will find that the Centre parties there, which are sister parties of the Centre Party in Norway, the Centre parties there are social liberal. They are very pro-immigration. They are very focused on combating climate change, whereas the Centre Party in Norway is more of an interest organization for farmers. What they do predominantly is skepticism towards the EEA, towards EU. They are against taking in more asylum seekers. They are focused a lot on having Norwegian food. I wouldn't characterize them as far right. They're absolutely not. I would rather characterize the Progress Party, which Vegard's party and my party have been in government with, as more far right. However, certain of the politicians in the Centre Party have definitely used some tactics that you see throughout Europe. Both in the sense that they're very anti-immigration. I wouldn't necessarily say that they've shown any racism during the elections, but what's been interesting is them hopping onto culture wars. Like, there is a candidate for the Centre Party from Møre og Romsdal, their first candidate, Jenny Klinge, and she's written debate articles and gone out in media and said that she's scared because of veganism and what the vegans are doing to our children. So the Centre Party has hopped onto a lot of new culture wars that I don't think we would have seen without the internet, such as like vegetarianism versus meat eating, blackface, is that okay? Can you wear a Pocahontas costume on Halloween? And it's very weird because those kind of debates are probably interesting from an academic perspective. I do not think that moves the common man and the common woman in their everyday life. I personally do not care. I'm just I want to be removed out of the conversation whenever we hop onto new culture wars, but that's what the certain politicians from the Centre Party has hopped onto. And then they also chose what should be mentioned too. So between 2005 and 2013, when the Centre Party were in a coalition government with the Labour Party, with the Socialist Left, our Prime Minister was from the Labour Party. And the Labour Party had over 30% of the votes. The Labour Party has been the dominant power in Norwegian politics since World War II. And But then this election, the Centre Party suddenly did pulse at around 20%. They were still lower than the Centre Party. No, it's lower than the Labour Party. But suddenly the Centre Party did good polling, and then they chose to say that the leader of the Centre Party should become Prime Minister. And I think that's a huge hit for the Labour Party as well. They're used to having the Prime Minister. There's only one leader of the Labour Party since World War II who has not become Prime Minister. It's very much what they're focused towards. They're a safe party that is known for governing our country. They've gotten us through the oil crisis. They've stabilized and built the country since World War II. And then suddenly their coalition government partner wants to have their own prime minister. So that's also been chaotic in this election.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I think at this point I am going to introduce you. Well, you two know each other, and he's the person who makes this event possible. Hello, Santiago.
Hi, guys. Very nice to hear all of you.
So Santiago is so for those of you who maybe don't know this, so Santiago is a member of our community of pro-European campaigners, and he he worked, studied maybe. I think he definitely worked in Norway, and he was like very insistent. We need to do this. I have my own I have my own socks with the Norwegian flag. We really need to do this event together, and he's the person who connected, the three of us or the four of us. So thank you, Santiago, for that. You have been, of course, following the election as someone who has a strong interest in the country. What can you tell us about the result? Do you agree with what Vegard and Anne have said about about whatever? Even I'm very interested about this center party. To be honest, I really want to understand the narrative that these parties have across Europe. So please take it away, Santiago.
Yes, thank you, Sebastian. I'm obviously, I have remarks and questions for our two panelists who actually were on the field and doing a campaign during COVID, although it looked like that wasn't that much part of the debate as it is in other countries, since Norway has managed COVID really well. My interest is, and I've been having these arguments with Labour Party people that are very excited that they have a chance to govern again. And my number one question would be, even though the EU was not really a debate that was prominent during the campaign, it was climate change, what to do with the oil industry. So basically social issues, existential issues, you could call them. But then, and we talk about the Centre Party, which, I mean, it's the third largest party, if I'm not mistaken. They're an agrarian party that I would say they're veering on populism because they go with a very extreme message. I think they started finally getting the scrutiny that a big party does when they're polling very well in the media. That was not the case before. And they start getting challenging questions, and then they have to moderate their message on the European Economic Area. What also, and this is my question, from my feeling, from what I've been reading throughout the election and even before, is the role that the largest trade unions and labor unions in Norway play within the EU debate. My feeling is that they're within the Labour Party, even though it's led by what's going to be the next prime minister, who has been foreign minister, health minister. He is, if you want to put a label on him, I mean, he's a globalist. He certainly believes in international cooperation. He taught at Harvard. He studied at Sciences Po. Right? He is not a person that will, bring, as prime minister, will take Norway out of the EEA. I don't see that happening. However, I do believe that in his party, there is a growing Eurosceptic wing. You don't really have to look outside of the Centre Party to look at people that are not happy with the current arrangement. And it's mostly to do with social dumping. It's mostly to do with, the way that they see sovereignty. So I see a lot of people thinking that it will never happen. It will never happen. I hate when people say this, especially during political campaigns, that something is impossible. That's not true. In politics, everything is possible. and I see it, as a risk that you could have a growing Eurosceptic movement in Norway's largest party. It's a governing party that is viewed as honest, as a responsible party. So I want to know whether or not you guys agree with me. And as a second question to you guys, I want to know, Vegard talked about the center party basically stopping, or winning the referendum against joining the EU. I want to know what those that are parts of political parties in Norway that want Norway to become an EU member, what can they learn from those that are campaigning against EU membership? What is it about their message that is, that works with Norwegian voters about whether or not they should join the EU? Because from what I know, Venstre is the only party that is openly campaigning for Norway to join the EU through a referendum. There you go. So correct me, and then I want to know on both sides, on the populism, their message, and how they are going about delivering the message of when Norway should join the EU. Because the last referendum was in 1994. I mean, Vegard, you guys were not young enough to vote when that happened, and that changed your life. So I want to know within the youth. Yeah, there you go. What is the feeling also amongst the youth about how important this issue is?
Oh, yeah, so interesting topic. I mean, Vegard's party, they're for EU membership, but it's an open secret. The man on the street should probably not know about that. My political party, the Liberals, were actually against EU membership in 1994 when we had the last referendum. We've changed, but it's been pretty weird being a member. Like, we just turned last year. And it's been pretty weird being a member of a liberal party. All our sister parties throughout Europe are pro-EU. We see that the big changes, the solutions to the big challenges we're encountering, they can only be solved through international cooperation, whether it's climate change, whether it's organized criminal networks, whether it's refugee problems, whether it's privacy, whether it's big tech companies not paying enough taxes. It can only be solved through the EU, because that is the only instance we have internationally, the only organization that is equipped to handle it. Whilst my party was against EU membership in '94 and only turned last year, and we're probably more pro-EU than Høyre, the Conservative Party right now, in '94, the two parties that were most pro-EU was definitely the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. And then, I do think that because we haven't had any new referendums, it has not dominated the political discussion, that the population is more critically viewed towards the EU than they would be if we had an informative debate about membership. But that's maybe one of the good things about the government right now falling, that both my party and Vegard's party are out of government. That gives us the room as opposition parties definitely to take up those debates, because I do think that within the next 10 years, the EU will expand. The countries there will grow closer together. And for Norway's part, we do have to ask ourselves the question, do we want to be a part of this? Do we want to sit around the table with the big guys, decide how our continent will change throughout the coming years? Or do we want to sit in the hallway?
Now, my political party has always been a Euro fan. It's not just Eurovision, it's Europe. And we will continue to be so in the future. During this election cycle, I've been thinking a lot about the man who once lived in my aunt's house in Hosanger close to Bergen. Halvor Lassesen. He was a church attendant at the local church in Hosanger, and the priests who in 17 something who was appointed to this church, he demanded that he was the only one to sit, which was his right, in the boat when the other guys did their rowing. That made Halvor chase that guy out of this small village. He had a son, and I've been sleeping in that bed since I was young, called Nikolai, who took his name Wergeland, was one of our founding fathers for Norway. I think that the question you raised, Santiago, is linked to that story in this sense. The Norwegian people are very, very, very occupied by justice, rettferdighet, as we would say. And I believe that in order for Norway to be a part of Europe, it would have to be an equitable agreement. There is, on the left, as you pointed out, especially within the trade unions, a rather large antipathy towards Europe. Sadly, that's the case. The only way of getting that hurdled finished is to find a reasonable way of talking about Europe. We don't talk very succinctly about what we are trying to achieve in Europe. And I believe that more European politicians should participate in Norwegian political debate. That's the one probable route in order to engage Norway into a new Europe debate. And next referendum, when it comes around, I'll be voting for Europe. 12 points.
Thank you, Vegard. Thank you, Santiago, for the question. I want to use the last few minutes of our chat to talk about your personal experience, Vegard and Anne, running the campaign. So you, like we said at the beginning, you are young politicians running for office, and I am pretty sure that you have done that in exceptional circumstances, even though the COVID situation is better than in other parts. I am pretty sure that you have faced so many issues, and you had to change the way you campaign. You cannot get closer to the people, which being an election time and being summer, it was the only time where you could see actually people on the street and you could actually have face-to-face conversations. So I'm pretty sure that you had to change tactics. You had to go probably digital. You had to utilize so many other tools or new tools. How have you done it, Vegard? And also tell us, for the people who are following us and who are thinking about running, running for office, how is the day of a how was your average day running the election campaign? Just take us through it.
One of the things that we did this election that we did not do the last election was phoning people. So that's a new part of our political outreach. We tended to go knocking on doors. This year we've taken up the telephone, and that has been extremely effective. So I would recommend that to other political parties as well. We've had so much nicer conversations, and we've had longer conversations than what we tend to do. So the telephone is a new door. And And I really hope that we will continue doing that in the future. I managed to get in 9,900 kroners during 2 hours of collection from our non-paying members. So that's actually rather impressive. So we've done that, and we've had outreach either one-to-one or via different posts on social media. Well, I'm sure Anna has done precisely the same.
So it was a tough campaigning period, no doubt. We were not sure how we would go on with our campaigning with the COVID measurements that we had. The Norwegian state has been quite strict precisely on gathering, having people in your private areas, whatsoever. So I think we also, I do think Vegard and the Conservative Party, they're a bit more professional than my political party and the Liberal Party. At 4.5% of the votes, we're kind of small. We don't have a big organization. So I think like in February, March, when we started campaigning and started posting on social media, started laying strategies, we weren't completely sure what to do with our time. But then August came, summer came, suddenly a lot of the measures were alleviated, and we were able to do a campaign which was pretty close to normal. At least we couldn't do as much direct meetings with voters as we're used to, but we definitely came close to it. I remember there were certain days of this campaign period in which I sat in debates from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. Like, I just sat in debates all day. I did not think that would be possible. I just assumed, I remember in February, I was just like, okay, I'll be sitting on Zoom all day. Like, that's how I'll meet voters, just like we're doing right now. But because of the vaccination rates, because the government did remove some of the measures, we were able to come close to normal. And also we were into how COVID didn't really influence the public debate much. I do think there are things to criticize about how the Norwegian state has handled COVID. For instance, the measures when it comes to family and partners of people living in Norway visiting our country, which has been pretty hard for a lot of people. It's been a tough call. But at the same time, I don't think any political parties would have anything to earn precisely from criticizing it. Yes, the Labour Party, the opposition, could have gone against Høyre, against the Conservative Party, and said that they handled that aspect poorly, but the Conservative Party could easily fall back into, oh, but Norway's been the country that has handled COVID the best way. So I think that's predominantly why that hasn't been a big part of the discussion.
I would just like to add that Anne's political party, Venstre, has been very prominent in Oslo. So your colleagues have done a wonderful job, Anna.
So back to my original question, Vegard. How is the the use of the in someone running for office, a young candidate running for office? So you wake up, what's the first thing you do, all the way to going back to bed? I hope not too late.
The first thing you do is put on your party official clothing and get outside. So one of my things that I've been doing with morgenaksjoner, morning actions, is going out from my house and meeting the governing mayor of Oslo, Raymond Johansen from Labour Party. He has a dog that he walks in the morning, and he has been rather annoyed that I've been so cheerful and happy when he's seen me out by the park. So the first thing you do is get out, greet the voters, and smile. And if you can't smile, grin. And if you can't grin, go home.
That's a very picturesque way of putting it, and I love it. I love it because that's what an election is all about. So how tell us, your day, what's been your average day running for the parliamentary seat in Hordaland. So you woke up first thing in the morning, and then what you were doing? What was the first thing that you always did, and what type of events and activities you did during the day?
So I think most days I would wake up and do something we call rush time campaigning, which is basically where we stand near a train stop, near a bus station, and we hand out brochures. And that's actually an excellent form of campaigning because no one asks you the tough questions. Everyone's on their way to work. And you just stand there and just hand out brochures like, here, you get this, have a good day, okay. So that's usually how I would start my days. And then because I'm 23 years old, I'm a youth candidate to the parliament, even though I was second candidate here in my region. I was also a youth candidate, which meant that I had to do a lot of school debates, which is basically a system in which all the political parties represented in the parliament, they participate in debates in front of schools. And that would take up most of my day between around 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock most days. And I had to drive pretty far. I don't have a driver's license, so my friends had to do it in order to take those debates. But it's really crucial because even though we debate in front of 16, 17-year-olds, which I do think highlighting the differences between the political parties is a big step in when it comes to involving more people in the democracy at an early stage. But I mean, 1/3 of every high school, like 1/3 of the student mass always has voting rights. And for my party, we usually mobilize very young voters. So for us, the school campaigns are pretty crucial. So I think I took 15 school debates everywhere in my region, and it's a pretty big region too. So that's what 2 weeks of my life went into. And then apart from that, I usually spent all my days like doing standing in the city center, giving out information, doing a lot of debates for interest organizations. I think that's also what surprised me the most from being a candidate this election, how many interest organizations that actually exist. And all of them have their own debates about their own topic that the interest organization is focused towards. Like, I did a debate on gaming. I did a debate on integration and asylum policies. I think that's also a pretty interesting topic. But I also did debates on how politicians should serve the people who build buildings, and how buildings can become more climate efficient towards 2030. Like, there were a lot of fringe discussions. I did debates on EU membership for the interest organization No to the EU, which was it kind of sucked for me to sit in. I had nothing to do there. No one wanted to vote for me. I think I lost more by turning up than I would if I didn't. But that took a lot of time.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that last part would be very interesting for many people who follow us, who are part of our community, and who have made the decision to run. So we have young people running and who asked for this type of events running in Denmark. There are local elections coming up in the Czech Republic, of course in Hungary, where there will be later this week, there will be like a big primary election with a lot of young people. It's a unprecedented number of young people running for office in Hungary. So one of the things that most people think about running is that you know, they may think that you spend a whole day, doing, like very, how can I say, with the nice part of campaigning, or maybe, doing like big speeches or, being welcoming this and that place. Whereas actually campaigning is, you hit the street, you are the first one to wake up so that you are there when people start arriving to the bus station. And the saying, you are the last one who goes to bed after everyone has done, has commuted back home, and maybe then you try to do more at night, catching up, maybe preparing the next day. So it's pretty exciting to run for office, especially as a young candidate. So anyone who is thinking about it, go for it. And with that, we are going to leave it here because one of the things that unite us in this community is that like we are passionate pro-European campaign communication professionals. The second one is like everyone, like our guests, we are also pretty busy, have pretty busy agenda during the week. So we always want to do these type of events, like 1 hour short. But I think we've covered a lot. We've covered the outcome of the elections. We've covered the conversation about, the topics, the oil, climate change, Europe. And then we have learned a little bit more about how it feels to run for office in Norway, a country that I deeply admire. I still want to go back and go to Preikestolen again and to enjoy nature and probably meet you guys once I am there. Thank you, Santiago, for making this happen. As always, this community is about, the people who are part of it. So if you have more ideas about what we should be doing or more interesting people we should meet, please let us know. And you already know probably our website. It's right there on the screen, campaignplaybook.eu. Please sign up, and I'm hoping to see you in our next event, either online or in person. Thank you very much, guys. It was truly great.
Thank you so much, Sebastian and Santiago and Anna.
See you guys.
Ciao.
Likewise.